I really don't get this. I don't get why people say that, you know, um, there's really a difference here. And I want to talk about this because some people were talking about Lia Thomas and how they're being exposed for having autogynephilia. The thing is, I find that a lot of people associate autogynephilia with like different aspects to it. People have different takes on this. Like, some people act like they're creeps and like something's terribly wrong with them, right? And that they are dangerous. And then some people act like it's totally fine and should be accepted as far as trans women are concerned. They should be accepted as women in their idea of what a woman is. Now, my thing is specifically, it's just like kind of like I don't personally think that they should be really considered any really different than the different grades of autogynephilia, which I feel like nobody really pays attention to, really, all the levels of autogynephilia. Because if you really did pay attention to this, you would notice most men have autogynephilia. They just don't admit it, I think. But, and not like something I find as specifically a bad thing. Because honestly, I'm going to actually talk about some things pertaining to my personal life. And I personally want to talk about some people that some person I've been involved with in the past. In fact, a person I talk about on here a couple times, generally in a positive way. This is not to attack them or anything of that nature. So if they run across this video, it's not a negative thing. It's kind of just a thing that I've noticed with um, men in general. And I kind of find it interesting because it's like, to me, I don't mean all men are gynophiles, but I do think that, there are different levels. People always try and focus on someone who is getting hormones and is, trying to change their genitalia to be female or trying to imitate females for their own sexual pleasure on a daily basis. They don't even really pay attention to the main autogynephiles who are like really out and open about this, who look for women who they are interested in women, have sex with women, and they live as men. But they specifically have this whole situation where they are literally having a situation where they're fucking women and they are dressed up as women while they fuck women, basically. So, you know, I mean, I've encountered men like that before, and there's levels of that as well. And then there's even lesser levels than that, in my opinion. I mean, let's be honest. Why does anyone not realize that lesbian porn is specifically a good example of how men are autogynephilic? Like, men who watch lesbian porn, what do you think they are? Like, obviously, they are autogynephiles too. Nothing wrong with it. But I mean, like, many of them do fantasize about women being with women. Now, that's not really, I don't think, creepy or bad or that they're bad people or something's wrong with them. I just want to know now, what's the difference? What specifically is different between the man watching lesbian porn and fantasizing about, the woman with another woman? But a person like this who specifically, fantasizes about imitating women, isn't Leah just living out the fantasies of those who watch lesbian porn, those who have sex with women while they're dressed up? The different levels of it, they're just living out their fantasy even further. But is that really specifically the same as trans? I don't know, and I don't really care. Like, even if it is his fantasy, I mean, their fantasy. Um, Even if it is their fantasy, I mean, I just don't really think that is specifically a situation where, you know, I don't think it's a situation where you could say that this person can't do what they want with their body, you know. It's their choice. If they want to do that with their body to fulfill their fantasy, that is their choice, you know. But, to me, from an out as someone who is an onlooker, who is on the outside looking in, I do think that honestly that I don't really see how it's really any different. I wish somebody could explain to me, how do you see that men who watch lesbian porn are not on the same mental wavelength as this individual? They are all on the same level. They're all basically with the same mindset, you know. But one is more set in their own personal reality of their sex, basically, while the other one chooses to ignore this. But the fantasy is the same. So to me, when we talk about autogynephilia, I think men in general have autogynephilia in them. I don't see that as personally wrong. Like, I've said this before, I've been with a guy who liked lesbian porn. Um, very much so. Um, and that was like my best sexual experiences were with that individual. So I mean, like, I don't see them as bad people. I mean, I'm friends with that person now. I don't have any issue personally with that person. Um, so it's just like, for me, I don't see anything wrong with them. They're not really much of a problem. I mean, they can marry, they can have kids, they live productive lives as men. You know what I mean? It's not really a big deal. And some people choose to transition, yes, but I just don't understand how we're saying that that equates to someone who you depict as trans. Transgender is someone who has the brain of one sex and the body of another sex. So you say. That's what a lot of people are trying to model it out to be. To me, I don't really think there is such a thing as a female or male brain, but that is the ideology that these people have. The issue is, to me, is that if that's the case, then how come autogynephilia is in men and people who transition? Doesn't that kind of imply that, it's probably not because their brain is feminine or female? You know? So that's just all I wanted to say on this issue. It's just like, on autogynephilia, I definitely do not think that they are really all that safe to be in our bathrooms, in our uh, private spaces for women. Um, I don't think that they should be in our areas, especially when they have a fetish for women. They are attracted to women, and they have the strength to overpower women. I do not personally think that trans women, autogynephiles, or any man for that matter, are automatically going to rape a woman, abuse a woman, hurt a woman just because he's in a close space or she's in a close space with a woman. I think that specifically, when you give a population the upper hand over another population, and you give them a level of trust for them not to do the wrong thing, most people may not do the wrong thing, but many will. And it's for that minority that the people that people separate women from men, basically. It's not because men are bad. It's not because trans women are bad. It's not because autogynephilic people are bad, whether they transition or not. It's not because of that. It's because you have the power and you have the desire. Now, all we're asking you right now is to have the decency not to hurt women, right? But we can't expect every man and every trans woman and every autogynephile to have decency. You have to understand there are bad apples among all people. There are bad apples among women. There are bad apples among men. There are bad apples among transgender people. There are bad apples. And that's why I think women need to be protected in those regards. And in sports, of course. Because, like in sports, obviously, the fact that someone's an autogynephile, especially since it's a common thing among men, it's not going to make them any less competitive than any other man, obviously. And it's like, honestly, they don't even have the same, it's not equal footing, really. We've had this whole situation with sports since like the beginning of the 1900s, when women got integrated into sports as well. And there was a section for women to compete in sports. There was always this issue with intersex women competing with women. And so it's very weird to me why anyone would act like, intersex women would not be able to compete with women, right? But trans women can compete with women. Does that make sense? No, obviously, if someone is born part male and they beat women very well, and you see this, when you have a population of intersex women enter sports, they do very well, one, and many of the time they don't know that they're intersex for a while, so they might be competing since they were kids, they didn't know. And so they beat out many of the people when they're kids, the girls that are with them, they beat them out, and then they continue to beat females out because they are part male. And I have always thought that that's an issue, because what my issue with that issue is that intersex people don't need to be ostracized. I don't think intersex people need to be ostracized and made to not have any way to compete. Like the way they treated intersex people, and they have treated intersex people, is they force them to change their bodies if they want to compete nowadays. And back in the old day, they would just strip them of all their titles and say they can't compete. It's like they're totally disenfranchising these people, in my opinion. So I have always thought that there should be a third option for them. I don't think there should be a third option for transgender people. Reason why is two reasons. One, I would not want them to compete against intersex women, because I think that they would still have a chance of beating intersex women, and that's not really fair. And two, because I don't really understand, why do you let trans women compete in another sport when they can compete with men? Right? Women can't compete with men, right? Intersex women can't compete with men. They can't, because they physically can't compete. Trans women can compete with men. They choose not to compete with men, and that's their choice. That's fine. I'm not saying that they are men. I'm just saying they can compete with them, and they make the choice not to compete with them. Many men, and I'm not saying that trans women are men, I'm just saying many men in general will often compete with men, and many men will choose not to compete with men, right? So if many men choose not to compete with men for whatever reason, people choose not to compete all the time, you know, and that's their choice. We're not going to make a new section for them so they can compete more comfortably. You know, that's what they chose to do. That's their life, and that's how I feel about transgender people who compete. I feel like, well, you chose not to compete with men, then that's your choice. You don't have to, we don't have to have a section for you to compete with women because you have all the tools to compete with men and you be fine, you know? So that's my opinion on that whole thing, I just kind of feel like, all in all, I think like Lia Thomas has every right to transition and be a trans woman if she wants to. That's fine. But I don't get how people with autogynephilia are any different than men who watch lesbian porn, who fantasize about women with women. I mean, they're doing that for a reason. It's autogynephilia, obviously. um, and I just generally don't understand like how we can really open up bathrooms to transgender women and expect there to be still the same level of safety when we do not know the decency of every trans woman. And considering many, like the majority of trans women are attracted to women, it's only a minority that are attracted to men. And I know a lot of people get confused about this. They think that it's not that way. They think it's actually mostly gay people, basically, people who are attracted to men. This is not the case. Most of them are basically what they identify as lesbian or bisexual. So they are attracted to women on some basis. So, I mean, sharing a space with them when they have the strength and they have the desire to overpower a woman for sexual need, and desire, to me it's just like really weird because it's like it's obvious that they can easily take advantage of women if they choose to. We're just going off of their decency. Not every transgender person is decent, just like not every man is decent, not every woman is decent. I would assume most men, women, and transgender people are decent, but it's just like not all. You can't, if we were making that assumption about anything, it would be stupid. We could assume most people won't steal. So are we going to lay like money out in the open where anyone can get it? Because most people don't steal. There's still some people who steal. And that's why we are careful with, not leaving our money all out for anyone to take it. We secure our homes, we secure our money in a bank, we have security, we have police, we have so forth, to make sure that people don't commit crime. Yes, there is a minority of people who commit crime. Most people are law abiding, but we do need a system that is basically there in place to make sure that criminals are, taken care of. If we just went with the idea that since most people are this way, we're going to act like it's all, we'd have a huge problem. Plenty of people would be murdered, plenty of people would be robbed, sexually assaulted, so forth, And this is just the general population I'm talking about. I'm not talking about transgender people right now. I'm just saying you can't use a whole group of people and say none of them are going to commit any crime or any violation to women or to anyone. You can't do that. No group of people are all good. That's all I have to say. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe, comment down below, and have a great day. Bye, guys.